I'll get straight into it. Most people do not fear death as a concept. Instead, what they fear is never having lived. It is very easy to delegate this to saying that we're scared of death, that we're scared of that shadow at the edge of our days, the great unknown that absolutely nobody can enter and return from. But if you sit with it for a moment and you genuinely ponder it and you strip away the abstractions and everything that distracts you from the core of it, you will see something a lot deeper, and you will realize that it's possible that you're not scared of that final breath, but instead you're actually scared of the possibility that when it comes, all you'll do is look back and realize that you've been rehearsing your life the whole time, but you never actually performed what you wanted to. Heidegger called this being toward death. The idea that death isn't just an event at the end that you arrive at, but instead as something that should shape us as people and shape how we live right now. To live authentically, he said, is to live with death in your mind. Not as despair, not as some nihilistic view, but instead as urgency. Yet most of us will treat death as if it's some sort of distant rumour, and we will live our lives as if we have time as an endless resource. We'll put off joy and we'll postpone love and delay these risks, and we'll tell ourselves, I'll start tomorrow, I'll start next week. Okay, next year I swear I'll lock in. But death is the very thing that laughs at those statements, because whether you think about it or not, whether you believe in the fear of death in your mind, the clock is always ticking, and there's nothing we can do to stop that. Sorry to be existentialistic. Epicurus, the ancient Greek philosopher, had quite a different approach to this, however. He argued that we shouldn't fear death at all, as opposed to what Heidegger was saying. Because when we are alive, death isn't here. And when death is here, we're no longer alive to experience it. It's a clean and it's a logical comfort, but still, it's very possible that many of us can't shake that fear. And you have to ask yourself why. It's likely because death itself isn't the thing that we fear. Instead, it's incompletion, and it's the book that we never wrote, or the words that we never said, the conversations we never had, or simply the versions of ourselves that we never allowed to exist. Think about it for one moment, just a second, pause this video and think about it for me after I've said this. When somebody on their deathbed says that they regret not traveling more, or not reconciling with the person that they actually loved, or not pursuing their calling and their dream, they're not regretting the act of dying. They're not regretting the fact that they're soon to be dead. Instead, they're regretting the fact that they never lived fully while they had the chance to be alive. The tragedy here isn't death. Instead, the tragedy is the unlived life that they regret. Albert Camus, with his philosophy of the absurd, argued that life itself has no ultimate meaning, yet our hunger for meaning never goes away. This creates some sort of tension, like a rubber band. We want permanence in a world that guarantees only impermanence. It's a paradoxical idea. His solution to that was not despair, but instead it was to revolt. It was to live as if meaning was possible, that you have to create your own meaning, and to create and love and risk, knowing that nothing will last, knowing that impermanence is existing. And that isn't pessimism, that's not nihilism. Instead, that is simply freedom. That is that free will that you have and you have to exert. Because if nothing is guaranteed, then every single moment is precious because it's fleeting, because that the time expires. Now, the paradox, again, is that death gives life its value. The very idea of dying is what gives living a cause. If you were immortal and you lived forever, you could always postpone and you could always defer and delegate and always wait for that next moment. There'd be no urgency to act upon anything and no reason to risk anything at all. But knowing that that curtain one day will fall, and knowing that you will eventually die, it harbors the idea that every single act you make is meaningful. Every single I love you say to someone else, every single brushstroke on the canvas, every letter typed, every risk taken matters precisely because it doesn't last. So why do so many of us live our lives as if we're immortal? Why do we hide ourselves in routines and drown ourselves in distractions and numb ourselves with comfort? Well, it's because the alternative is terrifying, and I don't blame people for doing this. It's to admit that life is short and fragile, and it's uncertain. It's to admit that the only way to honor death is to live so vividly that when it comes, you don't flinch at it. But the uncomfortable truth that I have to tell you is that most people won't, and they don't. They aren't actively living their life as if they want to. Most people will tiptoe around their lives, and they'll avoid the genuine questions and the genuine things that they have to act upon. They'll work jobs that they absolutely hate. They'll say yes when what they really want to say is no, and they'll bury their passions under obligations. They'll tell themselves that they'll live later, and that maybe next year they'll travel once they have enough money saved up or their job is secure enough. But later will never come, and I hope you understand that, you as a viewer. Later is not a real concept. All there is present, and all there is now. So act. Death itself will come, and when it does, those people, the same very people that I'm talking about, will not grieve the end. All they will grieve is the wasted beginning, the wasted story. Now, the Stoics had a phrase, memento mori. It basically means that remember that you must die. It isn't meant to depress you. Again, none of this is nihilistic. It's a bit existentialistic. It's a bit sad to think about. But all I'm really trying here is to wake you up, just as the Stoics meant in that meaning, in that phrase. Now, Marcus Aurelius, he wrote that you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. And the idea of this quote, this phrase that he said, wasn't to obsess over death as an idea, but instead to let its certainty strip away the trivial, the arguments that don't matter, the pride that eats at your soul, the fear of embarrassment that stops you from trying, the things that you fear to do because you're scared that someone else is going to judge you. Imagine if you lived life like that, if you stopped fearing rejection, because in the face of death, what is a no except a passing breeze? You're going to live 70, 80 years. Who cares what that 5 minutes of anxiety and embarrassment means? If you stopped postponing joy, because in the face of death, why wait for permission? If you stopped fearing failure, because what greater failure is there to die without having any sort of meaning or having ever lived? Most people don't fear death, and I can confidently say that because if they sat with their thoughts for a minute, they would understand that they fear never having lived. And the cure for that fear is not the denial. It's not saying that, death can't come, I can't die, I'm never going to die. Instead, all it is living now and being present. Not living in tomorrow, not living in yesterday, not living in someday. All it is living in now. So the challenge I want to set for you is that when you wake up tomorrow, don't just step into the day as if it's another brick in the wall or another routine that you have to follow. Instead, step into it as if it were borrowed time, because in reality it is. Say the thing that you've been holding back. Start the project that you've been deferring and delegating. Call the person that you've been meaning to call and tell them that you love them. Because every single day that you put that idea off and you put off the act or the actions, you're not cheating death. Instead, you're surrendering the very life that you've been given and the very meaning that makes death terrifying. Death will come. And I'm sorry to break the news to you, but I think you already knew that. That is one of the only certainties in life. Maybe the only certainty that you have in life. But when it does, do not let it catch you rehearsing a life. Let it catch you performing and living fully, foolishly and fearlessly. You like those fucking, what's that called again? Where it's like the same letter at the start. Well, I'm yapping. All that life has ever asked of you is that you live it. So live it. Go outside and do something.